Hello. Hello, welcome everyone to this webinar introducing the new features on InSite Seismic Processor version 3.18. My name is Juan Reyes Montes. I'm a consultant at ASC, and I will guide you through the main new features in this latest version of InSite, and also present some of the most important features introduced in the last couple of versions. You've got a chat, a live chat, where you can post your questions at any time, and we will try and answer them at the end of this short presentation. So, InSite, you might be familiar with it, it's a full package, it's an integrated package, software package for the management, processing, visualization of seismic, microseismic, and acoustic emission data. It's currently now it's on its release number 3.18, and this is a brief list of the main new features in this version of InSite. There's a new option. It's a modification in the grid search inversion algorithm, by which we can select a number of points inside or outside a geometrical object defined in 3D visualizer, so that our locations will be constrained by this object. In this way, we can produce more realistic locations. For example, in the case of processing data, acoustic emission data from a lab sample, from a rock sample, or if we know our events are constrained to a certain formation that it's somehow smaller than our whole grid search space. Another important feature that has been added into this new version of InSite is enhancing its security by adding the option to control the user access to InSite. In this way, now you can create different users for InSite with administrator level or with a standard user level. And also you can add features such as the password control access to InSite. The main idea of this is that we avoid possible hacking through robots that get access to the application, or have someone accessing our projects through InSite if they have access to our machines somehow. And well, there are also a number of bug fixes that you can see listed there, mostly having to do with visualization, and also enhancing or the options for the import of geometrical objects defined as stereographic files, STL files. In this case, we've extended the versatility to include those created by SolidWorks. Okay, so, sorry. So let's see these new features at work in InSite. And I'm going to start with the new option to control the user access, because that's something that you set on installation of InSite. So I'm going to install the latest version of InSite in my machine. I'm going to run, for example, InSite HF. It applies to all versions of InSite. Yeah. So here you can see your installation file running. Select here next. We'll read through the license agreement. If we agree, we come forward. Allow InSite to install the option for CopyMinder. Whether we want to install InSite for all users in this computer or just to the current user. So we selected now to install it for everyone accessing this computer. We can select the folder directory where InSite will be installed. By default is this one. And this is a new feature where we have the option here to enable the user access control or not. So we're going to select it for this demonstration and proceed to install InSite. As I said, I'm installing InSite HF, but this applies to all versions of InSite, InSite Geo and InSite Lab, etc. So we've got it installed now. Yeah, it's successfully installed and updated. And I'm going to run InSite for the first time. If you're running InSite for the first time, it will prompt you to enter a password for the administrator user. And this is, you cannot change the username in this case, and whoever have access to the installation file of InSite will have administrator access to InSite itself. So we set up our password, and I will enter probably the wrong password. Let's see. And it's telling me that, yeah, this first password has to be at least 8 characters long. So I enter a new one, 8 characters long, but you can see that it also requires a level of complexity that includes letters in lowercase and uppercase, digits and symbols. Right, so I'm gonna now follow the format InSite requires for this first user. And once I set it up, InSite runs as usual. Yeah, so we can open a new, let's create a new project. And we can, if we go to File here, we can see new options in File which refer to this feature, such as the management of different users, the option to switch user, and the option to change your current password. Let's open the user management because this is probably the most interesting. Remember, on first run, on first execution of InSite, it has to be the administrator running it because you will have these permissions, this administrator permission, and the administrator has access to these features in this menu, such as adding a new user, but also changing the settings, changing the controls on the users, such as you can customize the minimum required password length, set a expiry period for the password for users, so they have to renew their password every certain time, in this case 30 days. You can customize that as well. Set the maximum number of login attempts for a user, so that means if the user fails the password check more than 3 times, it will mean that the access to InSite will be blocked to that user only. Any other user can still have access to InSite, but that particular user will be blocked for a certain period of time that we can also customize. In this case, it's for 10 minutes. After which you can try again, have another number of attempts to log in. In case all these logging attempts fail, the only option will be asking the administrator to reset your account, reset the password to your account. And we can see here we can add a new user following the settings that we have established there. So okay, and we have an administrator and a new user. If we can switch users and logging as the standard user we have just created. And you see that now the option to manage user accounts is no longer there because we are now logging as a standard user. Remember, this is a feature that is optional. You can decide whether you want to have this or not, its control or not, on the installation of InSite. So now that we have InSite open, I'm going to quickly demonstrate the second new feature that we've presented before, which is this modification of the grid search inversion algorithm. And for that, I'm going to open a project, an example project. Yeah, in which we have events already located. You can see here we have a number of events that have been fully processed. This is a hydraulic fracturing example that we have. We have already picked them and locate them using grid search. And we can see that it defines, so there's a very well-defined fracture through it. I already have a box here which I'm going to delete because I want to demonstrate how this feature works. Right. So if we open the settings of the 3D visualizer, and we go to the 3D grid, we have the option here to visualize our research. Okay, and we can see that our inversion algorithm works across this whole volume defined by this grid search. So events could locate anywhere within this box. This box up to now has to be aligned with the geographical coordinates. That is, it has to have one axis oriented as the northing direction and the other axis oriented in the eastern direction. But we might have another case in which we know our formation, or our stimulation or the induced seismicity that we expect to is not precisely following this orientation. We may want to reorient it across a different direction. Well, in that case, we can use a box and orient it in any random direction. Yeah, for example, like that. Yeah, and restrict the search, the inversion algorithm, to whatever volume is inside this box. We can use any of the other drawing objects that we have in InSite, such as an ellipsoid or a cylinder, which is useful in rock testing in the lab, or a box, as we have selected here. We now need to go to our processing settings, into our locator settings, and here is where we customize, where we define the settings of our grid search algorithm. And we can see here a new feature, the new feature. So here is where we define the overall grid search, which is following, as I said before, the geographical coordinates, northing, easting, and depth. But here we have the option to select which object within our 3D scene, in this case we have a cuboid, we want to use to restrict, to constrain this search. If we only select the object, it will carry out the search inside the volume defined by this object. If we select invert, it will be the opposite. It will restrict the search to any volume within the overall grid search, but outside of the cuboid. I'm going to just select InSite in this case. Okay, select OK. And just to demonstrate this, I'm going to rerun the location. Let's leave it running. And there's one big difference in between using this and what would be a special filter. For example, you could before just select a filter and disable any events that were outside of the box. And we will see the impact here. In that we are not disabling or restricting any of the events that currently locate outside of the box. Those events might locate within the box or at the edges of the box if during the inversion the residual meets the conditions that we set up, that we stipulated for the residual to actually locate the event, if there is a position within the box or in the edges of the box. Now we've seen here the result of this. Events are now only locating within the box, and we have seen that some of the events that previously located basically following the orientation of the fracture are now clustering at the edges of this box, just because they found an optimal position there with the which meets the criteria that we established for the residual for the event to locate. These are parameters that you can further customize here. See, here's where we define our residuals, in this case the time residuals. And if we go into the settings, we can also apply some further constraint into the orientation, into the what would be the angular residual. Okay, so this is a very quick overview of the new features within this new release of InSite. I'm going to go back to the presentation just to say that for this, 1 second, yeah. That as usual, you have these ways to contact us if you have any queries. If you want to ask how can you upgrade your current license of InSite to get this new version, 3.18, or what features have been incorporated since the version that you have currently, just drop us an email into asc-info@appliesysmology.co.uk. You can also visit our YouTube channel to find there will be videos with tutorials and just showcasing some of the functionalities within InSite and our services. And always you can follow us on LinkedIn, where we post any news relating to our consultancy work or our developments within InSite. I can see there are no questions on the chat. Please contact us if you want to, if you have any questions. And once again, thank you very much for your time today, and hope to see you in our next webinar.